he's on. Oh, that's convenient. We're probably almost exactly 12 hours away from meeting him for the first time. It'll be really real tomorrow. Knowing that, like, what happens tomorrow is essentially the end of his freedom, you know, his life.
All right, good afternoon. I'm Greg Squire from Homeland Security in Portland, and thank you in advance for helping with this case. Particularly, I'd like to thank our teams who are here from Brazil, Australia, and Europe. Just really appreciate you guys coming all this way to help. It's been a very long time coming, 5-6 years that Cassie and I have gone through it. This is him today, kind of easy to spot, but we have a couple other pictures in the ops plan. He's going to be charged with enterprise, and what that does is basically highlight what he's been doing and what the 400,000 people on his website are responsible for the distribution of millions of images and videos of child sexual abuse. I've been doing undercover a long time, and trust me, these aren't just run-of-the-mill pedophiles. They're some of the most advanced criminals on the planet. This is the target's apartment, mostly relevant to the 3 who are going to be inside. We're gonna take him inside almost immediately. If he has his backpack with him, we'll take that into custody. Same with the phone, but that's the exit there. Our 3 eyes in there will be in comms with Cassie. Cassie's gonna be online early. If he decides to get online before he goes to his big appointment, and Cassie will be able to engage, confirm he's in the apartment, confirm he's online. So it's a big day for Quackers. There's a lot of foot traffic out of this door. A lot of kids moving in and out of here. There's a lot of adults, families, so it's not just college kids here. It's a pretty good mix of people. Our 3 interior people will cover here, here, and here. He's gonna have to walk past you. It's up to the 3 of you how you wanna do it. As soon as they see him and begin to kind of get an indication what door he's going out, they're gonna call us and we'll hit it up over the radio. The central location will be my vehicle and the few people who are with me. Getting into the building, it's going to be just the apprehension team and my car. Team 5, check in, please. So we're going to roll up in the building with maybe 6 to 8 total, no more than that. Let's get a quick radio check, like get to where your vehicles are, get your gear on, whatever you're going to have for tactical gear. Again, just to reiterate, the primary objective here is server access. Any questions? Stand by. Target is moving. Hey, how you doing? How you doing, bud? Hey, Greg Squire of Homeland Security.
All right, how are you?
Good, buddy. Gotta have a little chat with you, all right? Okay. Come on. Good boy. Good boy. Bit of a morning routine for the dog and I. Get out into the woods. Come on, let's go. No houses, no lights, very little cell phone coverage, which is kind of a bonus. You know, the problem that we work with never goes away. What'd you see, huh? What do you see? When I started my career, I didn't really realize how deep and dark things were gonna get. In 2007, I was working for the Postal Service. I had 2 kids at that point. My kids are the most important thing to me. But I spent 7 years delivering letters, and I was pretty much at my wit's end at that point. I applied for Homeland Security. Basically, they said, hey, you know, you're gonna be assigned to the cyber group. And I said, okay, great. I was just ready to start working. Crimes against children was the bulk of what we did in that group. You know, I didn't have really have any idea what world exactly I was walking into.
Yes. Good boy. Good boy. Come here. Come here.
The first video that I saw that really opened my eyes to what child sexual abuse was in 2008.
So we moved in here when the kids are both pretty little, like maybe 5 and 2, something to that effect. And it was just such an amazing spot to get. We had a swimming pool, great big yard. And you know, we would spend our off time and just letting the kids run around out here. It was just a really nice piece of land to have. I think it was a Sunday morning, and the kids had been playing up on the deck there by the windows. I grabbed my work laptop, and I had recently gotten a whole folder, basically of results from an email search warrant. That was when I saw the one email from the suspect. And I noticed there was an attachment. So I saw the attachment was a video. So once I clicked and opened the video, I just saw a bedroom, basically. The camera kind of panned around, and there was a little girl in bed, like in an adult bed, a large bed. And she was laying there. There was a book, a big picture book, kid's book, next to her. And then I could see an adult male coming into focus. He started to read the book to her, and like for that 30 seconds, it looked like something normal. And then he undresses her, and then the abuse starts. And the girl just, it looked like her soul left, watching it happen. And him, I was ready to murder him, you know, like just watching him do this and watching her, like, just endure it, you know, like that's what it looked like to me. And yeah, for that to go on for so long, you know, I think it was probably 4 full minutes of him raping her. A long time. I mean, I had never seen anything like that before. You know, now I have an unfortunate library of that stuff in my head, and so do all the other, you know, folks that do it. But that was definitely the first time. And while it like takes from you, it also gives. Like, you're not gonna find a better fuel to go hunt someone down than that. It doesn't get any more passionate than that.
Keep it small. You can always go back for seconds.
I don't really like diet sensitive Peter.
Yeah, I know. How about that?
I think that's even, don't you? 1,
minutes
2,
should be
3,
fine.
4, 5. Yeah.
Thank you.
Ooh. See, small piece.
When I first met Greg, I thought he was very intense, super high energy, hilarious, obviously very dedicated.
We became friends. Like, we really had the same passion about the work.
Why doesn't it want me to go that? I don't understand what it wants me to do. It's weird.
Have you been here before?
If I told you to drive home right now, you wouldn't be able to make it.
No, not without GPS.
Just saying.
We were working all the time. It seemed like we were jumping from one case to the next, focused on the trading of child sexual abuse materials.
Good thing is that you come out like right in midtown.
We had been doing all the conventional, email cases and Facebook leads and things like that. We would say, oh, here's this screen name. Let's ask the company who it's registered to, or let's look at the IP addresses that it's been accessing this website.
It was so easy for law enforcement to go after open websites that everybody was transitioning over to the dark web.
The first case that really took off on the dark web was the Lucy investigation. In January of 2014, we discovered this series of photos that, was named Lucy, of the same girl being sexually abused. In the images, we could see light sockets, electrical outlets. So we knew it was most likely a little girl here in the US. We had, enough reason to believe that she was actively being abused, and her pictures were being distributed across the dark web. As we gathered more, we learned that she had been abused from a younger age. This girl was probably 7 years old in the beginning, and we think she's almost 12 years old now. She was being raped by this man, maybe up to 5 years. I mean, it really was, it kind of took us back a breath.
The dark web is built to hide your identity, to anonymize your traffic. There's no traces of any information that say, well, this is where this person came from. So literally all we had with this Lucy case was the images that we were staring at. But this offender was very good at covering their tracks. Consciously cropping out or altering images to remove specific things and be able to hinder our progress.
For like distribution or definitely production, we don't have that. We won't have that until we get back to the lab and do a deeper dive.
We were working this every day for 6, 7, 8 months. We could communicate all through the morning, all through the night. In the photos, like all photos, there's things in the background. We were looking for clues.
We watched Lucy grow up, basically, in an environment of abuse, like of systematic abuse.
I mean, it really took us back, especially, Pete and I, having kids that age. About the 8th month of the investigation, we were able to identify a piece of furniture in the photos. That piece of furniture had far more limited sales than other items that we had already identified.
We were trying to make contact with manufacturers and distributors and say, help us out with this, this furniture set. Can you give us a customer list? We got a list of about 40,000 people that had purchased the set.
At that point in the investigation, we're looking at 29 states here in the US. mean, you're talking about tens of thousands of addresses, and that's a very, very daunting task. It was a tough time for the team. 9 months is a long time to look for somebody. And as we're doing an investigation, she's still being abused.
There's victims that we have never identified. But you can't give up. If we're not going to do it, who's going to do it? Eventually, you're going to get something that will get you there.
I can remember clear as day, we were talking about, you know, he's been very careful and he's taking things out of the pictures that, you know, he feels would help identify the girl and locate her and everything else. But the question at that point was, like, what can't you change? Clothing can change, bedding can change, all these things can change, but is there something that can't change? And that's how we came to look at the bricks.
How often do you see an exposed brick wall inside of a child's bedroom?
So I started just Googling bricks, and it wasn't too many searches that I found the Brick Industry Association. So I called. There was a number on there in Virginia. And I said, hey, you know, my name's Greg Squire. I work for the Homeland Security, and, you know, we're working a case of a missing girl. And the woman on the phone was awesome. She was like, how can the brick industry help? I said, well, I have a picture. I want to know if somebody can tell me something about these bricks. She said, we have brick experts all over the country. We can share it with our distribution list. And we were wrapping things up for the day. And I don't think I was even at the car before I started getting emails. And I think we all kind of felt like that rush of adrenaline was that all of a sudden, maybe something could come of this.
I work for the Acme Brick Company. I've been in sales since '81. Over the years, I would say I've sold in excess of 300 specific colors and sizes and styles of bricks. That day, I was sitting at my desk doing my normal, probably paperwork or a report or something for corporate. And it popped up in my inbox, and I read the email, and I knew exactly what the brick was. I noticed that the brick was a very pink cast brick, and it had a little bit of a charcoal overlay on it. It was a modular 8-inch brick, and it was square edged. Immediately made the brick pop out to me that it was a Flaming Alamo. We made that brick from the late 60s through about the middle part of the 80s. And I had sold millions of brick from that plant. So I emailed Agent Squire.
I'm thinking, this is great. And so in my mind, I'm going, well, you know, would you have sales records of something like that? He's like, we've been selling this brick since the 70s. And it's all just a pile of notes and stuff like that. And I was like, and it kind of took the steam out of me a little bit. And he says, I think he called me son. He says, hey, you know what bricks are? And I'm like, you got me, sir, I don't know. He goes, bricks are heavy.
What I explained to Greg was that brick are heavy, and we can only haul about 10,000 to a truck. So we're not transporting bricks typically all the way across the country. So don't be looking way, way out. You need to be looking within this smaller area.
He says, that brick didn't travel 50 miles out of this plant. I was so excited at that point.
They were looking in 29 different states, and it was a needle in a haystack that narrowed it down to possibly one state, one city.
We have an extremely small area to look in now.
We were able to take the list from the furniture manufacturer Just draw a radius around this brick factory and see who falls in that radius.
He whittled down this 10,000 plus list to probably 40, 50 people. So we thought we had a fairly good shot if we looked through social media that somebody on that list might have a picture of Lucy on their page. And probably by 9 a.m., we were flipping through social media pages and there was Lucy right in front of us. Couldn't believe it. 9 months of looking, and we're sitting there staring at her, and we all looked and said, 100% this is her. 100%.
We literally started with a picture that could have started anywhere in the world, and then we narrowed it down to one house. That was a good feeling.
They had also figured out that living in the house was the mother's boyfriend, and that was a convicted sex offender living there. I mean, at that point, it's 10 or 11 a.m., and our first thought was, how do we get there before she's home from school and eliminate the chance of him having access to her even one more time? And by 4 o'clock, our whole team was in that house, safeguarded Lucy, had started the interview process, and by 5 o'clock, the suspect was in custody.
I got an email saying we found her. This little girl now is safe and out of harm's way. My wife and I have been foster parents for over 20 years. We've had over 150 different children in our home. We've adopted 3. So doing that over those years, we have a lot of children in our home that were abused, that were neglected, both physical and sexually abused. And it leaves a mark on you. It leaves a mark on your psyche that stays with you. What they do day in and day out and what they see is a magnification of hundreds of times of what I've seen or had to deal with. So I can't imagine what they have to take home with them at night.
After the Lucy investigation, Pete and I really began to focus and become dedicated to dark web activity.
The use of the dark web just expanded, just exploded. The number of users and the number of outlets was just dramatic increase.
That was our first glimpse of them creating forum-based websites. Those sites just look like a regular forum of people who all had a shared interest. People can belong to woodworking forums and gun forums and car forums. The structure is exactly the same, but for the content. They trade child abuse material all through the day and all through the night. Each site kind of has their own niche. So this might be only boys, this might be only girls, or only hardcore. You build a community around it, and you quickly find out that there aren't just ones and twos of guys interested in this, but there's thousands. And it just becomes a breeding ground for who can be the more shocking person, who can take things to the next level. We saw the abuse of children getting younger and getting more violent. Probably it was out there, 10 years ago, but now we saw it all in one place. And with this anonymous network, they were hiding nothing. They felt free to say whatever they wanted, and that's frightening. We needed to be in there. We needed to try to find out how we could infiltrate these networks, how we could disrupt them, what could be done to take on a group of 100,000 guys with the resources we had, which, to this day remain very small. This was really the beginning of having dedicated online undercover officers that would function full-time being part of these communities.
A lot of undercover work, which Greg took the lion's share of. Being able to be accepted by such a group is a pretty heavy task. It's like going undercover with the mob or something.
Face-to-face undercover, there's a lot written about that. People going into gangs and going into doing these really deep undercover roles, but this was brand new. We were entering and working in a borderless environment that was operating 24 hours a day. We realized the need for some help.
I remember my first investigation, my first role, my first task in this new job was watching several hours of a kid being raped in a hard way. It was really difficult for me. And it changed me as a person, as a man, as a father. It changed me.
And that's when JetBoys, BAP, and GAP came online. I think that's the first time we see the Russian sort of...
We established a network with different investigators, and it's easy to send a message to someone like Greg and all the other Gregs that I know around the world. It takes a network to defeat another network.
Globally, we were all trying to find our way, trying to find a strategy so that we were focusing on the most violent offenders, the most dangerous offenders. In 2015, a dark web site opened up called Baby Heart.
Baby Heart was a board on the darknet dedicated to babies and toddlers, pictures and movies of babies and toddlers being abused. Contents, the pictures with babies was terrible.
A guy named Twinkle was the self-professed operator of the site. Naturally, he became a person of great interest to all of us. He was not just the administrator, but a major contributor.
Twinkle was the worst person on the darknet regarding the crime of child abuse.
There was times when he was contributing almost an unbelievable amount of material. I think it was somewhere between 12 and 15 children at that point that we could attribute to this one guy. And to watch somebody abuse, rape a baby, there's nothing human about it.
De qualquer maneira, tendo as passwords será sempre mais fácil.
That became an instant focus for our online undercover work.
We started to work with the Interpol, Homeland Security from the United States, Australia, England, Spain, France. Everybody was chasing Twinkle.
Baby Heart went from a couple thousand to 100,000 members, but trying to work on the identification of Twinkle was difficult. The paranoia in this community is ever present. There really is no letting your guard down.
Twinkle used several maneuvers to cover the tracks on the darknet. He was writing in different languages, like French, Spanish, Portuguese, English. In those chats that were written in English, he used an expression. He said, "It cost me the eyes of my face." It's a Portuguese expression. It's not an expression that you can use in English. It was the first clue about the nationality of Twinkle.
Our Brazilian partners had arrested a guy that had a relationship online with Twinkle.
When this guy was arrested, they seized a lot of evidence during a house search.
What they found was a link to a Facebook page in Portugal. That is what, in fact, broke open the case. Some of the pictures that we had of Twinkle abusing the children, we could see his hand. And his hand had a skin condition. And once we started that deep dive on that page, we saw a few pictures of that individual's hand.
The pattern, the color of the skin, we had a match.
We felt comfortable enough to get a team together to head down to Portugal.
Greg was part of the team that was supporting us with his knowledge, with his experience dealing with this kind of offenders. On our way to Twinkle's place, it was possible to feel the tension inside the car. It was 6 in the morning. I remember my heart like beating a lot. My main concern it was finding and seizing his hard drives, because we are not talking about files. We are not talking about digital evidence. We are talking about victims.
We approached his residence, pretty country road, farms here and there. And Twinkle's house was on the right-hand side as we approached, a place you would pass by in a heartbeat.
We stopped the car. Everybody jumped out of the car. We saw the door, and it was the perfect time to enter. In the second room, on the right, we found Twinkle. Twinkle was in his bed, laying with 2 kids, around 5 years in the time. We grabbed Twinkle. He was taken away from the kids to a different room. I remember his face. He was surprised. You can imagine a skinny guy, around 25, 26 years old, scared, and in a certain way, fragile. Like these guys, they have a perfect world in the darknet, but in real life, they are not that strong. They are weak persons. That's why they do this to the victims, because they are weak.
We started collecting evidence inside the house. Pretty Spartan living quarters, despite the size of it all. Twinkle was pretty agreeable to talk to us, to sit next to me and showing me his site. But the forensic team had isolated one desktop computer that they felt was the primary. The problem was the hard drive was gone.
I asked him, "Where is the hard drive?" And he told me, "It's not in here. Follow me." was entering deeper in the bushes. I said to him, slowly, walk slowly, because we didn't know if someone was hidden in here to support him or if there was something that he can use against us. I told him, don't try to escape, because we will chase you. And then, around here, we made a turn to the right. He pointed. He grabbed a plastic bag with the hard drives inside. I didn't believe that it was hidden, buried here in the middle of nothing and really far away from his home.
Böyle büyük sözleşme yapmışsın sen. Yavrum da pastor, biraz almak pastor oraya umutları geçti.
It was buried a couple of hours before we arrived. He abused the kids that were in his bed with him, and he took some pictures, made some movies, and he stored everything on the hard drive. And he came here in the middle of the night and buried again the hard drives.
As the search continued and questions were being asked of Twinkle, we went out to look at his car. And when we opened the trunk of the car, it looked like Twinkle was leaving for the weekend. There was some kids' toys, like some pool toys in the car, cameras, there was handcuffs, sex toys. And what he ended up admitting was that he had a weekend planned and that he was leaving that morning to go meet another offender, and that they had organized this weekend to bring each other's children to this Airbnb to have a weekend of abusing all the kids together. Now, this was completely new to me and everybody that was there. You know, there was a pretty experienced group there, and this was certainly the first time for all of us to go, you know, they had a planned weekend to, you know, sexually abuse babies, you know? So the team sort of got a plan together. I think it was about an hour away. The guy showed up pretty much on time. The primary police officers went and removed him from the vehicle, and when they looked in the back, his two kids were in the back. He decided to start confessing shortly thereafter, told us he was the one that they call the Forgotten.
Humanity is changing. You can see the sexuality is changing, and the internet is increasing this type of crime because we always had sexual offenders. But now we have a specific part of the society that wants to share with the others the abuses that they commit, and sharing with the rest of the community that you can see what I have done to these kids. And I cannot understand this.
Twinkle's material was brutal to look at and equally brutal to listen to. Any video, especially with audio, of the infant abuse is the hardest stuff to watch.
Someone else from another country dealing with this crime, you know that that person have the same issues that you have. And Greg have that issues for sure, because it's too much. It's too much every day, every day. It's not a bad week or a bad day at the office. It's a bad life.
The problem is the availability of it, right? If I'm an undercover gang guy, like I have to put on my like you have to like kind of get ready, right? Like there's a
ritual.
A ritual to it, right? I don't have that barrier. So all I have to do is turn on my computer and I'm that other person. And each time you flip open the laptop, you're in that world and you're having conversations with people about just the most horrible stuff. And then you can close the laptop and oh, I gotta get to the game.
Come on, White! Use each other, let's go!
Nice.
Oh, nice pass.
So in a matter of moments, you can go from really, really evil human to cheering for your kid at their game, or going to their school, or going to get ice cream and watch some guy hug his daughter and be like, you know, it certainly came with some collateral that we didn't see in the beginning.
I go to some special places. When I come there, I can switch off my mind from the daily job, from everything that I saw during the day, and it's easy to be a different person, or at last to try to be a different person, because in the end, the ghosts, they will always be in our minds. It's impossible to send them away. The challenge is living with them. Sorry. Okay. Yes. Yeah. Okay. I'm back.
After the arrest of Twinkle, we thought maybe at least it would give pause to Baby Heart. You know, that was the objective, right? To take this kind of site offline. But when we asked Twinkle, how do we take it down? How do we shut it down? I mean, I can't do that. You know, that's Lubasa. And so we pressed him a little bit, you know, who's Lubasa? And, you know, he just said, I just know him as Lubasa. He's not a guy who talks a lot. He just is the big boss. Lubasa, his name had been around for a number of years. We knew Lubasa to have up to 6 different sites kind of under his overall control, maybe 500,000 users. We had been compiling little bits and pieces on him to build kind of a dossier up. Through that, we started to get closer and closer to him. The break came from another agency, and they came to the working group and said, hey, listen, you know, we think we know who it is. We ended up going to Brazil. We flew down there with maybe 10 or 12 people, US law enforcement, folks from the UK. I was there to offer an undercover's viewpoint on how the sites were operated.
A gente chegou a esse nome, né? Chegou ao Lubasa, que propiciava que 5 dos maiores fóruns da Deep Web, a gente já estava há alguns meses, né, nessa investigação, realizando inúmeras diligências, né? Ele deixou de ser um nome e passou a ser uma pessoa.
Lubasa was on a whole nother level. If we get to him, we would have access to whatever's happening for him as kind of overlords. It would give us, for the first time, a glance from the top down.
A gente vai tirar em Brasília, tem que não dá pra trabalhar. Senta aí. Senta aí, tu tá demorando demais. Ei, caralho, isso aqui tá demorando agora. Vai, se explica a pergunta dele aí agora.
Agora ficou claro que você tá preso.
Você entendeu
Claro que
agora?
você tá preso. Você sabe bem o que tem ali, sabe bem os tipos penais, sabe tudo.
Lubasa was asleep when they went in. They roused him, and he was a little uncooperative in the beginning.
Você pode dizer quais são os sites que tem ali? Diz a relação de sites que você domina. Eu tô perguntando por curiosidade, porque eu conheço uns 8, mas deve ter mais. Pode dizer aí?
Central Park, né?
He was a young guy, under 30 years old. The type of person we are arresting are now getting younger and younger,
A gente não veio aqui a gente não veio aqui pra brincar, ficar tirando.
They grew up with a phone, they grew up with a laptop, they grew up with a computer. More often working in the IT field, web developer, software engineer. I mean, that's a skill set that we never saw even 10 years ago. They spend 40, 50, 60 hours online. This was life for this guy.
Tudo isso aqui são sacos com lixo. Né? E o nível da cozinha tá muito pior. É difícil descrever. Você tem que chegar aqui para ver e cheirar.
On the dark web, Lubasa was a master puppeteer, sort of say. But in reality, his day-to-day life, somebody living in basically like squalor.
Ele não tem cama, não casa, não nada.
And yet, here's this couple $1,000 machine running the abuse of 10,000 or more, child victims.
Porque eu tenho uma peculiaridade muito ruim. Eu me coloco no lugar da vítima. Então eu sofro muito com a vítima. Isso é péssimo. Quando minha filha nasceu, eu comecei a deixar de me colocar no lugar da vítima e passei a colocar ela no lugar da vítima. É uma coisa muito difícil para mim.
Moving now.
Thousands of leads were sent out to locate and arrest individuals who had been part of Lubasa's network.
Police with a warrant, come to the door!
Individuals on his sites that are viewing child abuse material. And even if that person has not had their hands on children, they are the reason the sites exist. They're causing the demand. They're encouraging those who have access. They are as big a part of the problem by driving others to commit offenses on their own children. These offenders know everything about security. They are technically savvy, and they're always going to be making changes to try to elude law enforcement. But thanks to our online undercover work, we were getting things done that years before you wouldn't have thought possible, making arrests and, just making a huge difference. That's an adrenaline rush that it's hard to match. At that point, my kids were a bit older and, very independent, very successful young people. And, that almost enables you to push harder. Like, I worked 10 hours today. I bet I can work 12. I bet if I get up at 3 this morning, I can surprise somebody online and I can get something else done. You just push yourself and push yourself and push yourself, and you're rewarded because that shit works. It is effective. But meanwhile, personally, you know, you're kind of losing. Who was I? Who's Greg? I don't even know what he likes to do. All of your friends all during the day, they're criminals, you know? They're pedophiles. All they do is talk about the most horrific things all day long. And when that's over, close the laptop and you look around and it's just you. It was easy at the time, you know, to pick up a glass or a ball or whatever it was. And you don't think about you when you're having some drinks, you know? It's easy just to go, all right, the sooner tomorrow starts, the better off I am. Because tomorrow I get back to work. You know, I definitely had a time when alcohol was a bigger part of my life than it should have been. Numbing yourself for a number of hours is not a solution.
We had been running at a heavy pace. There was no other focus than the job. It's very easy to go to some dark places, I think.
Pete's my best friend, you know, and your best friends can see things that others can't. And they can see those little changes. And we had a talk, or maybe a dozen talks, I think.
I noticed things that were obviously affecting him. Definitely unfocused anger at times that seemed out of place. Uncharacteristic. It's just turned darker, I guess. It's hard when the thing that brings you so much energy and drive is also the thing that's like slowly destroying you.
Not too long after I got divorced, and just a lot of things were happening, you know, in my own headspace. I think the hardest part of that was, I guess, admitting it. And I remember calling up my sister, Robin. We went out into the backyard of where I was living, and we sat there, and it took me a good 4 or 5 minutes to say, you know, I think I'm suffering from pretty bad depression. I think I was ashamed, you know? I think I felt shame that I had kind of succumbed to that. You're supposed to be bulletproof, right? You work in a space where horrible things happen every day, and you need to stand resolute every day and just be, you know, be tough or whatever we tell ourselves. And that was a big step in, I think, moving forward. I stopped drinking at that point, mostly out of fear. I think my birthday was the last day I had a drink that year. And I had actually opened a beer, and I remember having a few sips of it and then just putting it down. And that was it for 2 full years. That was that. And I needed to try to focus on getting my head straight. And a lot of that was for my kids, you know? I didn't ever want to be
someone, I guess that, they weren't proud of. Yeah, that was a lot of my motivation to get started, to get better.
You said you were fearful?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
Suicide. I just didn't want to have those thoughts anymore, I didn't want to hide from the pain. I didn't want to run from the pain. I didn't want to leave him behind, I didn't want to end things that way. Because I wasn't winning, you know what I mean? I wasn't winning by myself. It just wasn't going to happen. It wasn't going to be a fight that I was going to win. And if I didn't reach out and talk to Robin, talk to Pete, and maybe be in a bad place. And I just didn't want to be there.
It is funny to think about, like, kind of diving in with the case and looking at the one image and then getting it going.
Pete kind of stepped in where I needed him to. I thank him. I'll always thank him for getting me away from a place that was kind of dangerous. And I feel very, very fortunate to work with all my friends across the globe and to have them to lean on and say, hey man, it's okay.
Я помню первые годы, наверное, работы. Действительно было тяжело. Иногда день, два, три ты ходил в таком выключенном состоянии, и все время эти картинки, они были перед глазами. И вверх брали эмоции. Мы, как офицеры специализированных подразделений по всему миру. Время, вы знаете, мы стали понимать друг друга просто с полуслова. Вот, наверное, настолько у нас за время нашей работы
One of the worst guys that was not captured after the boss's arrest
was a user that went by LBO, or Lover Boy only. And, he and I had interactions over the years. He was a boy lover. He always loved things more violent, more on the rough side of things, a lot of rape, bondage, things like that. And even other users were going, well, what's wrong with this guy? He's talking about some really, really violent and extreme things. LBO got the attention of the community right around November 11th, 2020. He was making a claim that he had kidnapped a boy. And I was online that day and had read some of the comments around it. And, we read those with a grain of salt. It's not uncommon for users to talk that way and to go down those paths. And LBO, he was asked, yeah, I'm sure you did this, stop around, it's not funny, or whatever the reactions were. But LBO took it upon himself to provide a proof of life picture. And this is a boy who's clearly in distress. I can see his face clear as day, a blonde-haired boy. That really made my heart start to race.
We knew LBO to speak English and Russian. Probably more likely, you know, somebody from Russia or one of maybe the Ukraine or something to that effect. There was no doubt in my mind who I was going to reach out to, like, straight away.
Запросы, письма с пометками там «Срочно, срочно, Иван», «Тревога». Я увидел сообщение сначала от Грега.
I gave him a description of the boy. I said, you know, maybe 6, 7 years old, blonde hair. I would know who he is if he's in fact, you know, a kid that's missing.
Liar Boy Only, ЛБО, сокращенно. Показал фотографии. Там 2 или 3 штуки мальчика. А сравнив фотографии, пришел к выводу, что это действительно тот пропавший мальчик, которого ищут сейчас в России. Значит, 28 сентября 2020 года в отдел полиции поступил телефонный звонок от взволнованных родителей, которые говорили, что у них пропал при неизвестных обстоятельствах их сын 7-летний, который возвращался домой из школы. Вот это автобусная остановка после занятий в школе. И, соответственно, он вышел и проследовал вдоль дороги вот в этом направлении в сторону своего дома. Там вот все места вот эти вот прочесывались и туда, вплоть до леса. Здесь была настоящая поисковая операция. Вот видите, дом завалишь, все тут досконально.
14 дней розыска в режиме нон-стоп. В этой поисковой операции были задействованы все возможные силы и средства. Правоохранители, военные, спасатели, криминалисты, опытные поисковики.
В поисках мальчика принимают участие жители села и добровольцы из разных районов нашей области. Каждому дают посильную задачу.
Мальчик приехал после уроков на школьном автобусе в родное село, но до дома так и не дошел. Полиция объявила награду за помощь в поиске мальчика в 1 миллион рублей.
There's a real boy missing. The description lines up, timing lines up, and you just go, holy, this boy is somewhere with this monster. The boy that had been missing for over 50 days at that point. It's a terrifying thought. Yvonne had told us that they had called off the search October 11th and that they were just looking for the boy's body. And, you know, now we had called, you know, relatively out of the blue and said, you know, we think he's alive. While we breathed life into the investigation there, we also knew just how dangerous LBO was. And that was nerve-wracking. For me, and I think for everybody, it was the incredible pressure to try to find him as fast as possible.
Ну, в рамках такой большой страны, как Российская Федерация, да, с численностью населения там 150 миллионов, установить его будет невозможно.
You know, Yvonne doesn't work dark web cases. He's a street cop. You know, he's boots on the ground kind of guy. We knew we were going to need some serious resources to get this done. And, you know, those resources certainly included large data sets, large databases that Interpol holds. And, you know, one of my favorite people in the world is Gordana.
I received a message from Greg asking me for help. I know Greg long time. We work together. Greg knows that I speak Russian.
Gordana is an analyst and has worked, you know, many child abuse cases in the past. It was too easy to pick up the phone and get her involved.
Can you tell me what information you had to start with?
Loverboy only. LBO. Username. I have only username. And information that this username maybe kidnapped the boy. I start working on this case and nothing else except the work. Everything disappeared because I know that the probably life of this kid is in our hands. I check our database in Interpol. We have huge amount of digital files shared by Brazilian police when they arrest Lubasa. And I found more than 13,000 digital files connected with Loverboy only. Photos, links, messages, posts on forums. So I was reading all the comments, searching anything that can lead us to this guy.
Я читаю, анализирую эту информацию. Если что-то находил я, то, естественно, я делился со своими коллегами.
You know, from an undercover perspective, a lot of our job was doing kind of round-the-clock observation, observe the community, see what occurred. We were in literal constant contact, 20-plus hours a day. I'm not sure Gordana was even sleeping, to be honest.
All of us was in different time zones. But even if it's a night in US and Russia, when I send a message, I get reply immediately. So because of that, I realized we are all not sleeping. We didn't even think about sleeping.
Ну да, нас разделяет география, мы там с Грегом находимся по разные стороны океана, но у меня такое ощущение, что мы работаем просто чуть ли не в одном кабинете, и с Горданой тоже.
I just think we must find him. We must find him. Because he will kill him.
We weren't under the illusion that LBO would do anything but kill this boy. He'd been talking about that stuff for years, kidnapping and killing a boy.
These users, they very care about security. Because of that, it was very difficult to find him. But they made mistake. And we are hunting for these mistakes all the time.
Gordana built a profile on this guy, and there was 3 little nuggets of information that were really interesting. The first one was that LBO seemed to suffer from schizophrenia. Now, in Russia, people that have diagnosed schizophrenia actually are entitled to a pension, some compensation every month from the government. That would be something that Yvonne and their team could look into. The other point that they found was he talked quite a bit about his brother's occupation, and it was an occupation that probably could be checked in databases there in Russia. And then the third point was LBO had a conversation with another person about his mother being killed in a car accident. It actually had a date, a year rather, that car accident had occurred.
Мы стали, так скажем, пересекать полученную информацию, пересекать эти списки между собой. И в одном из списков мы увидели, что пенсию по психиатрическому заболеванию получает некий Копылов Дмитрий, 94-го года рождения. Нас уже как бы сразу передернуло. Мы подумали, неужели это он? Мы позвонили нашим коллегам, и они подтвердили, что да, действительно, его родной брат работает в их подразделении. С этого момента ни у кого вообще не осталось никаких сомнений, что личность пользователя ЛБО нами установлена. Единственный оставался вопрос, жив ли мальчик. К сожалению, зачастую факты пропажи детей от аналогичного характера заканчиваются смертью ребенка. Нами было после этого незамедлительно принято решение об обыске по месту жительства Копылова. Не выдать себя, да, то есть мы примерно за километр до дома заглушили машины, чтобы преступник не слышал звук двигателей, чтобы он не видел свет фар. Вот мы тихо все вышли.
Дверь ебашьте, парни. Давайте кто-нибудь туда, внутрь.
Вот дверь, парни, вот все, давай, сюда. Ломай. Давай, ломай.
Все, внутри.
Коня!
Да, туда, залазь. Да давайте здесь заходим через окно. Заходите через окно, быстрее.
И тут просто произошло чудо.
Ну, быстрее. Мальчик! Да ладно! Сука, давай, блядь, парни, мальчик внутри! Пацаны! Открывай дверь! Дверь открывай!
Дверь! Открывай, курица!
Ебашьте его там, блядь!
Дверь открывай, блядь!
Офицеры спецназа крикнули нам, что мальчик жив, он здесь. И мы закричали, что мальчик жив.
Мальчик там.
Мальчик там, все, слава богу.
Да! Да!
Дверь нам, блядь, откройте, вы ебаные братцы!
Открывайте, пацаны! Ну кто-нибудь!
Дверь, блядь!
О, нормально.
Да, живой!
Бронирован.
Стоп! Так, стоп! Так, все, не надо, так,
Те сотрудники, которые проникли через окна, они практически сразу задержали, то есть взрослого мужчину, которым оказался Копылов Дмитрий.
Как тебя зовут?
Я подошел, взял его на руки.
Молодец. Ничего не бойся, все хорошо.
Я думаю, то, что я почувствовал на этот момент, уже у меня на лице, наверное, да? Но это был неописуемый, конечно, восторг, это была радость. А многие офицеры, и даже в том числе офицеры спецназа, тогда плакали. Они не могли от вот этой сцены все сдержать слез. И, естественно, я сразу же оповестил и Грега, и Гордану.
It's really easy to remember every single piece of this because it was such a wild minute in my life. Yvonne sent me a message and said, "We have the boy. He's safe." Awesome, you know. It was just the best news that I think I had received, you know, and just staring at my phone, looking at that message. And I looked at Pete there and I said, "They found him." It almost took your breath away, you know. That's how intense it was.
It was maybe 3 in the morning, and I just wake up in a little bit panic. I grab my phone, take a look, and I see my colleague holding the boy. No words to explain this moment.
Приехал микроавтобус, где находились родители. И они просто его схватили, обняли и плакали.
You know, and seeing that picture of his parents hugging him. Yeah, it's just kind of makes you think of like when you hug your own kids, you know, and you it just brings a totally different value to that, you know, and to know that they're safe and to know that they're in your arms. I mean, those parents were told a month earlier that their son was dead. And that, you know, there was no more hope. And there they were, holding him on the train. Maybe the most special moment, you know, in my career.
Здесь был, да, третий раз я здесь, но каждый раз с таким трепетом прям подъезжаю к этому месту, потому что здесь, конечно, в один из осенних дней 2020-го просто произошло чудо. Никак иначе это назвать не могу. Фух. Неподдельные эмоции, извините.
I know I've come like a good distance, you know, like from where I was at any given like dark moment. You know, I spent years hiding how I was feeling. Like, I'm pretty decent at lying and telling, being, you know, wearing a different mask, and then, hey, everything's fine, everything's cool, you know, no big deal, like, let's go do something. I'd kind of come to terms with or peace with, like, this isn't something you carry by yourself. Well, this isn't something I carry by myself. There might be some super soldier out there that can do it. It's just not me. Today, I have a conscious effort about recognizing what's going on that's good.
So beautiful.
Like every moment with my kids, I'm truly thankful for that stuff. I believe in this mission beyond 100%, and I believe in the people, and I believe in, you know, we can make a difference, but I want to be able to continue making a difference. What little sacrifices I feel like I've made over the years, I would do it again, over and over again. I couldn't see myself doing anything else. I feel honored to be part of the team that can make a difference, instead of watching it on TV or hearing about it and going, shit, that's awful. I'd rather be right in there in the fight, trying to stop it.
I told you a little bit about the bricks, the brick thing.
I've known about the brick thing since the beginning.
You did, yeah.
Yeah.
Like the whole idea of even being able to have this conversation someday is still like feels super surreal.
Yeah.
Like it feels like a miracle in a way.
I am incredibly lucky to have a good support system right now while I'm dealing with this. I have more stability. I'm able to have the energy to talk to people, which I could not have done this even like a couple of years ago.
You just move on and deserve to live like a awesome
I would
life.
love to work on being a functional person. Memory loss is a big part of these things, and I just don't remember a lot of it, which is fine with me.
Yeah, right.
But like at that point, I was praying actively for it to end. I had been at that point for years, but not to sound cliche, but it was a prayer answered.
Yeah. Sounds weird, I'm sure, but like you wish there was some telepathy and you could reach out and be like, listen, we're coming.
Yeah.
Like it does sound cheesy, but like that's the genuine feeling when you're in the middle of those things and you just want to like reach out and go, we're gonna get there.
Step into a world of secrets with BBC Podcasts.
You know people don't want you to do a story when they come at you with a gun.
For years, no one believed us. Thank goodness the BBC gave us that platform.
It is nerve-wracking going up against someone so powerful.
World of Secrets. Listen wherever you get your BBC Podcasts.